What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me are my two great co-hosts, Fede Perez and Ralph Hannah. And guys, what a week! What a week for Paraguayan football. It's been crazy enough that we had to take this break, and we thought, there's probably nothing going on. Obviously, World Cup qualifiers are happening next week, but boy, we have a lot to speak about. We're going to go into that in just a bit, but let's get my co-host to talk about what they've been dealing in their world. Let's go to Fede right now, where it's been kind of interesting how Paraguay's been kind of the center of the world, at least for those that like football, that are always involved in it. And now in this week, it's been crazy, especially now with all like the year coming to an end. Everyone's kind of focusing their attention on what's going on in Paraguay.
Hi, Roberto. Hi, Ralph. Hi, everybody from Guarani Vision. It's great to be back for another episode. It's great to talk about everything that we have here in Paraguay from the football point of view, just like always, just like every week. And what an exciting week it's been, Roberto. I still can't get my head around it. I thought it was going to take a lot longer to confirm. Nobody was actually expecting this news, to be honest. Here in Paraguay, the CONMEBOL really kept it under the rug, especially from us, from the journalists. And yeah, what a surprise! We got the invitation to go to a press conference in CONMEBOL, and once we got there, we just saw the banners, World Cup 2030, and everybody was looking around and starting to ask questions, and it was confirmed. Because yeah, we got to talk about the situation, just the way it played out. I mean, a lot of people were expecting for the World Cup to be played in South America, but now we understand that most of the World Cup will be played in Europe, and Paraguay will get a single game of that 2030 World Cup that has been announced. Well, we definitely got to talk about that because that was the big news. We got to talk about the clausura. Obviously, where Libertad, my number one candidate, is still running up there, running away from everybody. And obviously, we got to talk about other things because we got so much ahead. I heard you guys last week on the last episode, and I know you guys talked about a lot of things, many things. But there's one thing I would like to just remind everybody, and please take notice of this. Go to your computer, go to your device, go to your iPhone, go to your cell phone, whatever you use, and go to that link where you can vote for Julio Enciso's goal for the Puskas Award. Please, we got to do a campaign about this. We got to tell everybody to go and vote for that vote because it's very important for people to vote for this goal. I mean, all the other countries are doing it with their star, and we got to do it also. We got to show up for Julio Enciso. We got to vote for that goal, that special goal, because it can be the best goal of the season. I mean, what a week it's been, not just for Julio Enciso, who's still injured, obviously, but also for Miguel Almiron. We followed what happened with him in the Champions League, scoring his first goal, having his first two games. I mean, I'm just so happy for him, and we need that Almiron also in the Albirroja. They're going to be playing Argentina very soon, so I'm just really happy for this milestone also from Miguel Almiron and for many other Paraguayans who are doing really well around the world, especially Miguel Almiron, because we haven't seen a Paraguayan in the Champions League for so long. I mean, it's been so many years for me to put on the TV and watch the Champions League game and think that there's a Paraguayan there and follow him during the game. So it was really exciting to see him, especially go up against PSG and beating them, Roberto. I mean, that was just everything for me this week. World Cup, Miguel Almiron scoring on the Champions League. I'm done for this week, guys. I don't know about you.
Hey, we still got 6 days until that game against Argentina, so we got to continue that hype. We got to stay on to it. And Ralph, we also have to talk about what's been going on for other players abroad. We mentioned Almiron, scoring the goal against PSG. We also had, of course, Enciso still nominated for the Puskas Award. Imagine that, having the best goal in the world. I mean, that would be insane. Ivan Franco's a champion in the United States. It's not Diego Gomez. It's not Andres Cubas. It's not Christian Barre. It's Ivan Franco, winner of the U.S. Open Cup, the first Paraguayan to ever do it, beating Inter Miami, the Inter Miami Stars, of basically the Harlem Globetrotters, it seems, of MLS. He's a champion over there in MLS, over there for Houston, and everything else that's been going on in this world. I mean, we only have a limited amount of time to talk about it. I'm sure we'll talk about it very, very soon. But yeah, I mean, with this, the World Cup, everything that's been going on in Paraguayan football, it feels like it's a perfect time to just dissect everything that's really happening and to even appreciate it as well.
Yeah, it's a busy time, right? When you start thinking about it, we didn't even mention that Enzo Gonzalez finally played his first minutes for Wolves, not for the senior team, but the under-21s. So he had a shot that went just wide. He was kind of involved in the build-up for their first goal as well, so that's positive for him. Ivan Franco, I saw him. I was at the Houston game on Saturday, and he started. He got a rare start, but the MLS at the moment is crazy. And you talked about Diego Gomez not being there, injured. Christian Paredes is injured now as well. We think Andres Cuevas maybe is injured. This is because there's like so many games happening. So since the US Open Cup final, they played 2 games because they played the weekend and then they played on Wednesday night. They're playing again on Saturday. There's so many games at the moment there that's something to look out for. And those guys play over the international break. So that's an interesting thing too. So there's a lot of football happening. And also, just to the women's game quickly, I mean, Olimpia are in the Copa Libertadores, so Libertad Limpeño played today, but Olimpia played last night and they beat Independiente Santa Fe in Bogota, which is a really good result. Remember, Independiente Santa Fe were runners-up in the last Copa Libertadores Femenina. So that's a great result for Olimpia, who have a lot of players that didn't get picked for the World Cup playoffs. So it's interesting, right? I think some of those girls, they wanted to show what they can do on a big stage, and they did that last night. So that's something to keep an eye on. Remember, this Copa Libertadores, they play all together. So it's going to be over in early November. It's not like the men's Libertadores, which has been going all season. And we also have a Paraguayan in the final there because Bruno Valdez, we got to the final last night. Gustavo Gomez didn't get there this time. He missed his penalty in the shootout. But that just tells us how much football is going on because we got so much to talk about.
I mean, it's been a lot. And here we are with another international break where we think that things are going to stop. But no, I mean, we got all important World Cup qualifiers for us, for this part of the world, at least, to speak about. But we'll get to that when we do talk about it in our future episodes. But let's go about what's happening this week. I mean, like Fede had mentioned, there was a press conference. There was even a cryptic tweet of Alejandro Dominguez, the president of CONMEBOL, a video of him dancing because he said he has some big news happening. And I'm thinking, what's going on? Everyone's trying to figure out, really the news. No one has said anything. And then before you know it, things start to leak. And then he says the 2030 World Cup will be in Paraguay, Argentina, and Uruguay. But there's a catch. It's only one match. It is only one game for those specific 3 countries. FIFA later then announced that the World Cup in 2030 will particularly be, the majority, of course, will be in Spain, in Portugal, and in Morocco. So the World Cup is back in Europe. It's back in Africa. But for the first time, it's going to be 3 continents hosting a World Cup, co-hosting a World Cup. And so what we see in this kind of case, it's a big deal for South America. It's a big deal for Africa, big deal for Europe. But of course, it's a big deal for us as Paraguayans. Paraguay will host a World Cup for the first time in its history. It is only going to be, however, just one match. The first ever game will be held at the Estadio Centenario in Montevideo, which was the host of the first ever World Cup final. So that's going to be huge for them. Then they're going to play the game at the Estadio Monumental. And then the big question is, where in Paraguay? Nobody knows. There have been some rumors going on about the Defensor del Chaco, about La Nueva Olla, or even this new Estadio CONMEBOL that is located at the old ground of Estadio General Diaz, right next to the headquarters, the Estadio CONMEBOL, which is around 60,000 people. So everything's been kind of going on. Of course, people are also celebrating the fact that Paraguay are at a World Cup for the first time in such a long time, that people are just even making jokes about Daniel Garnero, who hasn't even played a match yet he already qualified Paraguay to a World Cup, something that other managers haven't done in previous times. But I mean, let's go first to someone that is going to be playing host in, like we said, in 7 years' time. Fede, I mean, your reaction to all this, because it's a huge deal to host a World Cup. And yeah, I mean, people kind of were sold even beforehand that this whole entire World Cup is going to be in Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, even Chile, like the whole tournament. But one match for those 3 countries, and then the rest in Europe and Africa. I mean, you feel happy at the same time, but you also feel a bit like, just one match. You feel like kind of disappointed in a way, if that even is the right word to to even say for something like this.
Yeah, just hearing you out, Roberto, I had the same mixed emotions actually. Just as I was hearing the news. I mean, did we win this debate? Did we win this situation? We just won one game. I mean, it's not what everybody was expecting. It's not what they were selling to us. Also from CONMEBOL and from these meetings that have been going on for I don't know how many years now. I don't know. We have to go back to when the conversation started. Yeah, you mentioned Chile there. I know certain countries here in South America did not take well that Paraguay was involved in this situation between Argentina and Uruguay, especially because the first World Cup was only played in Uruguay. So yeah, it was Uruguay's idea to take it back after 100 years, and then Argentina said, "Hey, we got the stadiums. Why don't you use our stadiums? We'll have the World Cup with us also." And then Paraguay got in there, and Paraguay does not have any stadiums. So yeah, they got to build a new stadium. And then they wanted to bring in Chile. I know they had conversations with Chile, but FIFA was not really on the idea that Chile was the best option to get in this situation. And FIFA apparently, from what I've been told, wanted to make everybody happy. And making everybody happy implies this situation, giving a lot of games to Spain, giving a lot of games to Portugal, and giving Africa or Morocco especially a couple of games also. It's a weird situation the way I see it. I think the World Cup should have been played only in South America. I think South America deserves it. I mean, we won the last World Cup. We've made, from the sports side of it, we made enough arguments, I believe, to have the World Cup back here in South America. Yeah, 2014, it was in Brazil. You can say that also, but I mean, South America deserves it. And the way I see it is, why not involve more countries in this situation so you have more options? I mean, why not bring in Peru? Why not bring in Ecuador? Why not bring in a couple of other countries just to maybe see if you can actually host the whole World Cup? That was not even on the table. That was never actually discussed, and that's the feeling that I have, that they could have opened up the table a little bit more and have a couple of more options, I believe. That's why I think we're only getting one game, Robert, because we're not ready for more than one game. We got to be honest to people. We're not ready to host a whole face of group. We're not ready to face 4 or 5 games, I would even say. We don't have that many stadiums. We don't have the hotels for it. We don't have the transport for it. So it is a problem, and I don't know how they're going to solve these things from here to 2030. That's up to the government. That's up to the president. That's up to CONMEBOL and FIFA. They got to put their hands on this situation. Now they got to start working on Asunción because it's not ready. We saw what happened with the last national team, the game that we played against Peru, and all the trouble that they had in just a single qualifier game to a World Cup. And a World Cup game is a whole other stage, and there are other requirements. And you have stadiums here in Paraguay that you go to a game and you don't have where to leave your car. I mean, there's little details that we really got to take in consideration, Rob. You're always here. You're always going to games. You know what our reality is, and we're very far away from being a World Cup country or a country that can host a World Cup. I think that was part of the situation into just giving Paraguay, okay, you're getting one game, Paraguay.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about. Where do I start? So, firstly, I think this is a big win for Paraguay because of everything Fede just mentioned. I mean, on their own, Paraguay has no kind of rights to be hosting a World Cup or even a game. Like in a normal situation, it would be very rare. And so the fact that they get the game is good, but what's even bigger is they get to qualify, right? Because we haven't qualified for so long, and we've now guaranteed qualification in the World Cup. We get one home game, which kind of should help us in the groups, because you have basically a home game in the group stage. So I'm just thinking, like, calculating like TV money and prize money. They've secured a lot of money for Paraguay. So that's a big win, I think. The second big win will be if Alejandro Dominguez goes through with this plan of the CONMEBOL stadium, which doesn't seem to make too much sense. But then I understood it could make sense because they've had so many problems sometimes with games being hosted, where to take games when there's crowd trouble, how to do the single final. If you look at the pitch for the Copa Sudamericana at the moment, is in no condition to host a final, and they're trying to get it right. So in a way, it would make sense that CONMEBOL gets to manage a stadium that they can use for big showpiece games after the World Cup, things like Copa Libertadores. So that would be a big win for Paraguay too, because then the government wouldn't have to pay for the stadium if CONMEBOL are going to pay for it. So I think there's one thing there. Paraguay's come out very well from this. And a lot of it is, of course, Alejandro Dominguez's influence. He's Paraguayan, so he's the head of CONMEBOL. CONMEBOL is in Paraguay, but he is Paraguayan. I think that has helped. I'm sure that's helped a lot. And that's probably why the third country involved here is Paraguay, not Chile. But then the other thing we need to talk about is, okay, but why did everybody agree to this? Because like Fede says, it doesn't make so much sense for South America as a whole. Well, what they've done is basically they've had like a no contest pact, right? Or like a peace pact, where instead of everybody going against each other bidding, the bidding process can cost a lot of money too, right? It costs millions of dollars to prepare the bids. We're not going to bother with that because we had to go up against Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is going to beat all of us in the bids because they have more money than us. So what was the plan? Well, what they said is, okay, look, if we host it in South America, Europe, and Africa, those countries, they can't be in 2034. North America can't be because they're 2026. So only Asia or Australia, basically, can host 2034. And who's going to be the Asia candidate? Well, we know it's Saudi Arabia because they already said they wanted to. So the big news really is that Saudi Arabia have got the 2034 World Cup. But the good thing for South America is they don't have to spend now millions of dollars in some bidding process because basically they've been handed the 3 games. So they save some money there. So I think that was the way they got to this point where to try and keep everybody happy, you have to extend even to 2034, right? It's not just 2030. So that's kind of, that's, I guess, how it's worked out in this strange way. But I do think for Paraguay is a big win because, like Fede was saying, there's no way Paraguay would ever host the tournament on its own. So the joint bid was the best chance it had. And then the reality was, even if you did get, let's say, like 3 or 4 games, would you end up playing them all in Asuncion? That would be a bit strange. So they would probably have to upgrade the stadium in Encarnacion, definitely upgrade the one in Ciudad del Este. It would be spending millions and millions of dollars, which can be used in a much better way. So I think this is, in a way, for Paraguay specifically, I think this is like a really good result. Let's see the game they get. I mean, obviously it will be Paraguay will be playing the home team. And then if I'm honest, I'm guessing they're going to make sure that a UEFA team doesn't travel. Let's be honest. I think it's going to be against a CONCACAF or Asian team. The last UEFA team that came to Paraguay I went to that game, was 2010, Romania. We played a friendly against Romania. And I remember very distinctly, that was not the Romania first team that showed up. It was like a B team or an under-20s. So trying to get a European team to Paraguay will be very difficult. So my guess is we end up playing a home game against CONCACAF or maybe against Asia.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to really dissect to this, and we don't really have much time to do it. But like ultimately, there are a lot of pros and cons. And again, we have 7 years until dealing that. But no, it starts now. Like this all starts now. As much as we're all focused on what's going to happen in this World Cup happening in North America, gotta happen to see what's going on there. Even for one game, it's a huge deal because like you said, Paraguay haven't had the chance to host many big tournaments. They've hosted Copa Americas. They've hosted beach World Cups and South American games and all the sorts. I mean, they've had those opportunities, but this is a whole different level. Even if it is just one game, it's a whole different beast. And so, yeah, I mean, it's there's going to be a lot of questions going on moving forward. Certainly a lot of doubts, and things can change in 7 years. Who knows what could happen? So I think at first, and then speaking from it, it's a huge deal. It's a big deal for us, and I think we should feel happy that Paraguay will be playing host to a World Cup. But yeah, there's more questions and I think answers to this. So we're gonna have to wait and see what happens as we switch gears to what's been going on. First of all, let's see what's going on in the Clausura. Obviously the main update right now for those that have been following and paying attention. Libertad are currently top with 30 points. with only a couple of games left into the season. I think you have like 7 games left or something like that. But you have them top of the table, Cerro Porteño in second with 23 points, Guarani with 21. And then looking at all the rest in order, General Caballero, Juan León Marroquín, Resistencia, Olimpia, Sportivo Almeriano, Nacional, Trinidense, Tacuarú, Guaireña, and Sportivo Luqueño. Looking at how it is in the overall qualification for international top tournaments, Libertad still leading the way. They're going to go to Libertadores, Cerro Porteño. It looks like they will as well. But then you have a 10-point gap for the second stage with Guarani with 54 points. And then everyone else. Got Sportivo Trinidente in 4th place. So the 4th to 7th places are the ones that go into the Sudamericana. Of course, you have to remember the Copa Paraguay champion also goes to the tournament as well. So we still have some teams there. Who knows who can go in there? So we'll have to pay attention. We're in the quarterfinals at the minute. So it's we're gonna have to wait and see where we go from there. But you have that. You have Trinidad, Olimpia Nacional, and Sportivo Almeriano in 4th through 7th. In the relegation promedios, however, in the relegation playoffs, in the average, you have Tacuarú right at the bottom and Resistencia, but only slightly with Guaireña and Luqueño right there. So, it isn't that easy to pinpoint what could happen there. So we'll talk about that in the next future episodes as the clubs would come to an end. But let's switch gears to what's going on with the national team, because of course, here we are speaking on October 6th, 6 days from the big game against Argentina in Buenos Aires. A lot of storylines there. New manager Daniel Garnero announced his squad the other day, actually a few days before we went off the air the last time we spoke. So obviously everyone was really paying attention on what's going to happen with this new squad, who was going to go in, who was going to go out. And we have some few names, Fede. We have some new names. We have the likes of Antonio Sanabria. He's back on the squad after being a bit left out by Guillermo Barros-Schelotto in the last process. Adam Barreiro is back. The player at San Lorenzo who's having a fantastic year over there for El Ciclón. He's back on the squad, and rightly so, given the fact that Paraguay need the goals necessary. And then looking at the overall list, you have some of the main players as well that have been before. The new name is the 2 new names actually as well is Christian Paredes of Portland Timbers. He hasn't been in the squad, I think, at all during Guillermo Barros-Schelotto ever since Berizzo. He's back. And then you have his name forgets me. Alberto Espinola. He's back on the squad. He's back, and looking at some of the names, no Blas Riveros from the last squad, no Richard Ortiz, no Carlos Gonzalez either. No Carlos Gonzalez in that. So it's definitely a new change, and we're gonna have to wait and see what Daniel Garnero will announce today with his squad, with the players that are coming from the domestic league. There have been some rumors of Santiago Arzamendia. There have been some rumors of other players as well, but I think the big one that everyone is on their minds, and I feel a bit divided personally. I'd like to hear your thoughts about it with the overall squad, of course. The return of Oscar Cardoso, Tacuara, back on the squad at the age of 40, who's having a great year so far at Libertad. He's among the top goal scorers, but him back at the squad at this age, it shows that Paraguay are really desperate for goals, and he's done it beforehand. But this is an interesting squad by Garnero to at least pass his first test in terms of how he's judged as a national team coach.
It was actually what I was expecting. Just 3-4 maybe new names from the players that play abroad. Tony Sanabria was actually probably a player that really caught my attention just because of everything that's been talked about him. There was even rumors that he hasn't been well with the FA lately, that he's had discussions with Justo Villar, who's the manager, still working alongside Daniel Garnero. He's been there with the last coaches. He's staying at that job, even though Garnero has added a couple of more people around him. There were rumors that Tony did not want to come back, but apparently it was due to the last coach. He had problems with the last coach, not with the national team. So it's good to see him back. Adam Barreiro was a name that everybody wanted to see on the list the last time around, and it's good for him to get a chance, the opportunity to compete. I don't know if he's going to start or not. I do think that the players that Garnero knows well, that he managed at a certain moment, be it at Guarani, be it at Olimpia or Libertad lately, or even at Sol America at a certain point, like it was Christian Paredes situation. When he started playing, he came out of South America. He went straight to the MLS, but Daniel Garnero had him under his wings when he was just starting as a coach here in Paraguay. So I was actually I was looking forward to seeing that, to seeing the names that, Garnero is familiar to, and to see them on this list. And I'm expecting the same thing from the local list. I'm expecting several players from Libertad also, just because you don't have time to train here, guys. You don't have time to prepare the games. And that's the big jump that Garnero has to do from being a coach, a club coach, to the national team, just selecting players, pretty much not doing much with the game plan. I mean, it's just more texting, it's just more sending the players messages to their phones than actually having time with them on the training pitch. So it's a totally different job also for Garnero. And I do think it's a very important, or it could be a good shortcut to take that decision, to bring in players that he already knows, that he knows what they're going to do in the pitch. And it's a lot easier even for the player, to react in that situation, especially when you're going to go up against the toughest team in South America right now, which is Argentina. And you need to get out of Argentina at least with a tie, I believe, or at least not suffer 3 or 4 goals. I mean, that's what I think Paraguay has to go and try to get out of the Monumental. And then Bolivia, that's the big game. That's where you're gonna have to show all your power. You're gonna have to show the goals that you couldn't score against Peru, and people are gonna expect that same game that you played against Peru. That dominating game, and Garnero is gonna have to bring that with the goals, because we have to beat Bolivia now. We're against the ropes in that situation, I believe. So he's gonna have to step in with the right foot and with the right decisions also, and he's gonna have problems. I mean, being the national team coach brings in drama, especially last minute problems, injuries, players that come into the training ground, with injuries, with problems, and you can't have them for the first game. They were probably in your head. You were going to put him on the starting team, and then all of a sudden you can't put him on. I mean, I'm sure he wanted to count with Diego Gomez, but ever since Diego Gomez left that game against Peru, we've never seen him come back 100%. He played a bit with Inter Miami, but then he came out again. So, there are a couple of players that I think were going around Daniel Garnero's head, and I'm going to use these players on both games. And, all of a sudden, you got to change your game plan. All of a sudden, you got to change your players. And that's part of the job also for Daniel Garnero from this point on, Roberto. And that's, I think, the biggest task for him right now, Ralph. I mean, picking the right players for 2 important first games.
Yeah, 2 important games which will need different teams, or at least a different tactical setup, because of course Argentina is going to be to try and just keep in the game and play on the counter, whereas against Bolivia you have to take the game to them and dominate and win that match. It's going to be totally different. I think the point about injuries is huge, because that's just playing. I mean, it's a conversation around football a lot at the moment. It's a big narrative about, these players are playing too many games and the volume of games, and we're adding games because, of course, even the World Cup's getting bigger. And this seems to be a general conversation, but it is starting to affect Paraguay. We're seeing, I mean, Paredes, the day after he got called up, he played 30 minutes and then got injured. And he's a player that, honestly, I think he played pretty much every game for Portland, either off the bench or starting. He's an ever present usually. So that was just a huge blow all of a sudden, because I think to Fede's point, that's one of the people that Garnero knows he can trust. He knows, okay, he will play like this, he can do this, I know what he can do. That gives us a good indication of who might come in from Libertad. I think Melgarejo and Tito Villalba will probably come in. I mean, you wouldn't want to leave those guys out. And then the question is on Cardoso, or does he go back to his time at Olimpia and think of Derlis Gonzalez? But the problem is Derlis Gonzalez isn't really playing very well at the moment, since he's coming back from a long-term injury as well. So he has, again, this injury thing is there. And of course, he can't call up Julio Encisa because Julio's injured. So we are being really afflicted by this. And we're a squad that we're not such a big squad that have so many great players we can choose from. So it's really hard for him to get that right balance. And then the added thing that, for example, this weekend, being a country manager, not a club manager, he can't control who's going to get rested and who's going to play, because I'm sure he has some plans he wants to be rested, but he won't get that opportunity. Yeah, I mean, just talking about the squad as well in general, I think it's good. It's you can't make too many changes because there hasn't been time. There's not that many people to change, as we've just been talking about. I'm glad to see Galarza back in there. I know he doesn't play regularly for Talleres from the start, but he's a really interesting player. He's very physical, even though he plays in that attacking midfield role, and I think he can be a very interesting player for Paraguay if somebody like Diego Gomez can't play, for example. I think he can try and do some of that linking between midfield and attack, or maybe it's going to be Richard Sanchez who ended up playing. But Richard Sanchez didn't seem to have a great game in the last qualifiers. So again, it's really hard to pick who we're going to want to use for this, but let's see. And it's good to have Sanabria back. That's a big thing. That's the best kind of striker we have. The issue with Sanabria, by the way, though, is he's not playing in Torino. So we needed the Sanabria last season that was starting every game. He tried to get a move out of the club. They didn't let him move, and now he's stuck and he's hardly playing, which is the one disappointment. But I think in terms of quality, he's the best striker we have at the moment.
Yeah, and I think as well, this comes in with also Almiron, because he's the one that's kind of been, obviously on the attention now. He's getting his goals, scored a really good goal against Burnley as well, but he's on a good streak, scored against Sheffield, scored against Burnley. Now he scored in the Champions League against PSG. So that's something that people, and he, of course, won man of the match. This is something that's big for him. But of course now, and I'm sure we're going to discuss that in future episodes when we do our preview, is that now all the attention will have to go on him. It has to go on him, but I think the idea is to keep that base of players that have kind of worked out well and utilizing it. So, yeah, I mean, it's a huge test. And of course, playing against Argentina is exactly the big test you want. If there's any bigger test in the world that you want to see how good you are as a team, it's against the world champions in their backyard. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting. And I think we're going to obviously dissect it a bit in our preview. So keep an eye on that when we talk about Argentina, Bolivia, and of course, overall, we give our predictions for that big game against Argentina, and then back at the Living Sorters against Bolivia the following week. So, really excited, and I can't wait to dissect all this and to really close off this good episode for myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Ralph Hannah. Thank you so much for listening. See you soon.